Well, welcome everybody. We're having Dr. Ohta here from Japan, from Nippon Medical University, where he researched the molecular hydrogen. Here we're with the Molecular Hydrogen Foundation, of which I'm the executive director, and we are a science-based nonprofit that's focused on advancing the research, awareness, and education of hydrogen as a therapeutic medical gas. And we have the pioneering researcher here, Dr. Ohta, who was responsible for publishing the 2007 Nature Medicine publication that showed hydrogen has beneficial effects. And since then, the research has grown quite rapidly. So, Dr. Ohta, a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So you researched there at the Nippon Medical School.
Yeah.
I know you recently retired. Your expertise is in the mitochondria things. Perhaps you could share with our viewers a little bit about your background and how you got involved in the hydrogen research.
Okay, so as my background, I spent 40 years for the mitochondrial research, especially on mitochondrial medicine. I found mutant genes of the mitochondrial DNA that cause mitochondrial disease. So I was interested in how mitochondria contribute to our health. And then we found mitochondria generate reactive oxygen species that damage our cells and body. But we found reactive oxygen, some of the reactive oxygen has a beneficial effect. So it is so difficult. If we destroyed all the reactive oxygen species, it's not so good. I'm wondering whether we can treat reactive oxygen species. That is my background. And then we found that hydrogen can remove some of the reactive oxygen species, such as hydroxyl radicals, and then developed so many hydrogen effects afterwards. Yeah.
Okay, so your expertise is in the mitochondria.
Yeah.
You found that mitochondria produce reactive oxygen species,
Yeah.
which are very damaging to the body, but some of them are actually good for us, so we don't want to neutralize all of them. And so your hope or your goal was to find some way to neutralize only the bad free radicals, only the bad reactive oxygen species, and then you came across hydrogen.
Yeah.
And you started to find that, hey, this is a selective antioxidant.
Yeah.
It only scavenges the bad ones, like the hydroxyl radical.
Okay, but the story is not so simple.
Okay.
Because hydrogen regulate signal transduction and also many gene expression.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about this
yeah.
because just by saying hydrogen can scavenge hydroxyl radicals, we know this cannot explain all the benefits of hydrogen.
Yes,
so
that's right.
I know you published some papers in the scientific reports and signal transduction and the changes in gene expression. So perhaps you can talk a little bit about this.
Okay, so in the initial stage, I was interested in the acute disease such as cerebral infarction or cardiac infarction. And that time, so hydrogen is effective in a short time, 10 minutes or 20 minutes. But for later we found drinking hydrogen water is effective. Sometimes more effective than inhalation of hydrogen gas. So for me, it is curious and takes the effect was continued for a long time, at least 1 day or so. So, and also we found the hydrogen release so rapidly. So even without hydrogen, the effect continued for a long time. So it is curious. So I look at effect signal transduction and gene expression. That is my thinking.
Okay, so you started to see that hydrogen could be effective in the acute phase due to this maybe hydroxyl radical scavenging. But then you saw it's actually effective, like drinking hydrogen-rich water in a more of a chronic stage when all the hydrogen gas is really gone and out of the body.
Yeah,
it still has this residual or beneficial effect.
Yeah.
So you think, okay, maybe we're altering gene expression or something, and that's what prompted you to start the studies in signal transduction.
Okay, and also I would say that at first I want to spend time to find the effect of hydrogen gas at first.
Okay.
But actually, the effect of the drinking hydrogen water is better than inhalation of hydrogen gas in animal experiment.
Oh, so you mean you want to just see the effect of hydrogen gas, like inhalation,
Yeah.
and then you later found that actually drinking hydrogen-rich water is often more effective.
Yes, that's right.
And so you're like, well, this is very strange.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I spent a lot of money for the make equipment for hydrogen gas, but it was in vain. So
Okay.
I lost a lot of money for research, and so I spent a lot of time for the research of hydrogen gas, hydrogen water. So it for me, and at that time, it was very curious.
So
Yeah.
when did you start researching the hydrogen gas? When did you first come across this concept and started actually doing the research?
Okay, I must say that and for research, the research for hydrogen gas and hydrogen water is parallel
Okay.
at the time. But for the publication, we start the publication for inhalation of hydrogen gas. And then later we publish a paper on hydrogen water. But actually we performed the experiment at the same time. So yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
So because I thought that our editor or the reviewer feel more curious on the hydrogen water. So at first we published 3 papers on the inhalation of hydrogen gas, and then start the publication on hydrogen water. That is my story. So yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
It's very curious. Let's talk about the hydrogen gas concept, because when you talk to other scientists, people who have background in biochemistry or biology, for example, we understand hydrogen is rather biologically inert, if you will.
Yeah,
It
that's
shouldn't-
right.
You would think it would have no effect. So it's very curious that this hydrogen, because hydrogen, right, it's non-polar, it's neutral, it's not an ion. So why would hydrogen gas have an effect? So my question is, how have you been received by the other scientific community when you try to publish your results or try to explain hydrogen has this medical effect?
So I think that still it is difficult to explain all of them. But because I spent 40 years for mitochondria research, it is easy to treat mitochondria and reactive oxygen species. So I could detect various kinds of reactive oxygen species easily. So it is good choice that it was a good choice to see the reactive oxygen species after the treatment with hydrogen.
Right.
Yeah. So if it was very difficult to detect the reactive oxygen species, I couldn't do it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
just only one day is sufficient to detect the effect of hydrogen.
So because of your expertise in mitochondrial research and detecting ROS, you could easily show the effects of hydrogen.
Yes, that's
so
right.
even though you may not have been able to explain it, or even now we can't really explain exactly what's going on, we clearly see the observations.
Yes, yeah.
And would you agree that's common with a lot of pharmacology these days, that a lot of times we have chemotherapeutic agents that have a beneficial or therapeutic effect, but we don't know the exact mechanism of how it works? So in some ways that's kind of similar to hydrogen. that we don't know all the exact intrinsic details of the mechanism of how hydrogen works.
Yeah.
Similarly, there are many pharmaceuticals and drugs that we don't know the exact mechanism either.
Yeah. So it was very difficult to find the mechanisms.
Yeah.
So I was thinking for 5 years, and one day I thought that is free radical chain reaction should be important. Otherwise, hydrogen is inert and inactive, and hydrogen should not be effective.
Right.
Yeah, but I could not exclude other possibilities.
Sure.
Yeah. I think this is one of the mechanisms.
One of the mechanisms.
Yeah.
I think this is an important point because when you look at hydrogen gas, for example, if you drink hydrogen saturated water, the concentration at saturation is about 0.8 millimolar or 1.6 ppm, which is about 1.6 milligrams per liter. And if you were to drink a full liter of water, that can then be diluted to the rest of the body, about 40 liters of water in the human body. So the concentration of hydrogen is very small. The amount of hydrogen is very small.
But I think it's not so small.
Okay.
Because after the drinking hydrogen water, the concentration reach about 10 micromolar.
Yes.
Okay. Hydrogen is very light. So if we consider the weight of hydrogen, that is very small. But if we consider the molar, or the number of molecules, it is not so small.
I'm glad that you brought that up. This is a critical point. People see hydrogen, there's only 1.6 milligrams of hydrogen in a saturated liter of water, which, this is not very much. But it's because it's so light. The molar mass of hydrogen is only 2 grams per mole, but vitamin C is about 176 grams per mole. So actually, if you compare the amount of molecules of hydrogen gas that are saturated in 1 liter of water to the amount of molecules of vitamin C in 100 milligrams of vitamin C, you actually find there are a lot more molecules of hydrogen gas in 1 liter that contains 1.6 ppm than there are molecules of vitamin C in a 100 milligram dose of vitamin C.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
It actually is quite a bit, right? That's a very good point. We have to look at the moles to moles or molecules to molecules. We can't consider the weight.
Yeah. So, and I told you that hydrogen concentration lead to 10 micromolar.
Yeah, but 10 micromolar
is not so.
It's not so much
small.
the cytokines in our body or the other drugs. Some of them are on the nanomolar range.
Yeah, that's right.
And so it still has an effect. Yeah. So we can still have an effect even though people may say the concentration may be low, right?
Yeah.
But perhaps even more important than trying to show that the concentration is equivalent to other things is the fact that we have the observational studies. We have animal studies, cell studies at the similar concentration, right? And human studies showing these beneficial effects.
Yeah.
So going back to the early publication in Nature Medicine, right? And I just want to touch on this a little bit more because scientists would be rather skeptical again about hydrogen scavenging hydroxyl radicals because the rate constants are quite low. The amount of hydrogen gas in the body relative to, say, glutathione or other nucleophilic, reducing agents is a lot lower. But this gene expression that you brought up with the modifying the lipid propagation, I know that this is the mechanism to explain, for example, an anti-obesity effect. It can increase FGF21, fibroblast growth factor 21. So that leads to a lot of benefits. But Dr. Ohta, perhaps you could just explain a little bit more on your study on how you were able to show in a cell-free culture, right? That how hydrogen could actually, with the 4-HNE, the 4-hydroxynonenal, and have those changes to actually increase things like PGC1 alpha, FGF21, leading to this anti-obesity effect.
And also, everybody believes the hydrogen inert, and especially at lower concentration. But I found that only 1% of hydrogen gas, it disturbs the free radical chain reaction. So
which 1% is about is similar to drinking
yes,
hydrogen-rich water.
Yes,
so that's an important comparison. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And 1% of hydrogen gas leads about 8 micromolar of hydrogen. So that is comparable.
Yes.
So, and usually hydrogen is inert, but during the free radical chain reaction, even the lower concentration of hydrogen disturbs the reaction in cell-free system, and also in cultured system.
Yeah. This is important because he's really showing the actual mechanism in a cell-free system, taking lipids, basically some fats of the cell membrane, put them in a cell-free system, and showing that when you add hydrogen gas to the system, you actually prevent some of the oxidation, some of the peroxidation cascade that occurs, because you start producing this molecule. It's a byproduct, 4-hydroxynonenal.
Yeah.
What is the effect of 4-hydroxynonenal?
Hydroxynonenal disturbs signaling for the act phosphorylation. It is a scientific term, but signal trap function regulates phosphorylation of various kind of enzyme. So, and hydroxynonenal regulate phosphorylation of some kinase on the other transcriptional factors.
Okay, and then this ends up leading to the FGF21 and the anti-obesity effects and things, right? This is because what happens is 4-hydroxynonenal is this byproduct from oxidation, and it basically it forms adducts, or it basically hugs proteins and says you're not going anywhere, and prevents them from acting on the genes. And when you administer hydrogen gas, it prevents the increase of 4-hydroxynonenal, and that in turn leads to the upregulation of these genes, or it kind of rescues their effect, so it can keep those levels high. Yeah. So this leads to another increase in PGC1 alpha. Yeah. What are some of the benefits of having an increase in PGC1 alpha?
Oh yeah, PGC1 alpha has a multiple function. So hydrogen increase or decrease of PGC1 alpha. The PGC1 alpha shows a lot of function. So that's why hydrogen has a multiple function.
What are some of the functions?
For example, a PGC1 alpha regulate energy metabolism and also increase mitochondria.
Right, because it's a marker of mitochondrial biogenesis. So in other words, we have more mitochondria. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. So by having more PGC1 alpha, we're seeing an indicator of more mitochondria. So we have a better power supply to our body. So how does this relate to maybe fatigue or to various diseases or even exercise?
Yeah, so if the hydrogen increase energy metabolism, and that prevents metabolic syndrome.
Okay, prevents metabolic syndrome, which is like the obesity, high cholesterol, high fat, hypertension.
Yeah. So many diseases.
So many different functions. Because really that is one of the, as you sit back as a scientist and you hear that hydrogen is able to help with this disease, this disease, this disease, this disease, we're pretty much about 170 different disease models.
Yes, that's right.
Where hydrogen has shown to have this effect. Yeah. It's very strange. It's almost a red flag. Something isn't right. But you're saying here, it's really not so complicated because when you see that hydrogen affects PGC1 alpha.
Yes, that's right. And another pathway, the hydrogen downregulation of NFAT, which is one of the transcriptional factor. In this case, downregulation. Okay, for the PGC1 alpha, hydrogen upregulated. So sometimes upregulate and sometimes downregulate.
Okay, this
Yes.
is a critical point. I want to get back to this. I want to talk about N fat just a little bit more. So as a transcription factor like PGC1 alpha, that goes in, that basically they go. A transcription factor goes into the nucleus, it binds to the DNA and causes the DNA to make more proteins and cause these different benefits. What is the effect of N fat? When N fat is activated, what are the consequences?
And N-fat is contribute the regulation of inflammatory cytokine.
Okay, inflammatory diseases, the cytokines that cause the like swelling or pain or diseases.
So, and at least I show the two pathways for the inflammation and the energy metabolism.
Which is one N-fat and the other PGC1 alpha.
But hydrogen has more multiple functions. So
right.
There must be another
mechanism.
Yeah.
So okay, so you back to your point where you said sometimes hydrogen can upregulate things and sometimes hydrogen can downregulate things. This is also very, very curious, very strange. It's like hydrogen has a mind of its own. It knows what to do. It upregulates the good stuff, downregulates the bad stuff. But it's too small to have its own brain, right?
Oh yeah, brain.
Do you see other things where hydrogen is able to upregulate other transcription factors or other areas or downregulate other things?
And Matsumoto and Noda's group showed the increase of ghrelin, which is kind of a hormone from stomach.
Right. This is Dr. Maminoda. She's also one of our MHF advisors. She was a researcher at Rockefeller University and she's there at Kyushu University, and she found that oral consumption of hydrogen-rich water induced gastric ghrelin secretion. So ghrelin, where does that come from?
Come from stomach.
From the stomach.
So if we drink hydrogen water, hydrogen increase the concentration of the stomach easily.
Yeah, the ghrelin secretion. And what are some of the benefits of having an increased amount of ghrelin?
Ghrelin leads to brain and protects the neural cells.
Okay, so it has neurological benefits as well as I know some anti-inflammatory effects. Actually, so ghrelin is considered the hunger hormone. So many people these days are familiar with the intermittent fasting or the benefits of fasting or caloric restriction, right? And perhaps some of those benefits of this caloric restriction are mediated by increased gastric ghrelin production. So it's interesting because it seems that hydrogen seems to mimic some of the same effects as fasting, some of the same effects as caloric restriction. You also published a paper in the Journal of Obesity where that's the one with the FGF21, right? Can you explain some of those effects and some of the benefits that you saw in that publication?
Okay, so at first hydrogen involved in oxidative stress at first.
At first, oxidative stress.
So, but and also hydrogen is effective on energy metabolism.
Right, but increasing PGC1 alpha, more mitochondria.
At that time, we couldn't find the effect of PGC1 alpha at first. Okay. So I found a phenomenon for the energy metabolism because when we applied hydrogen water to DB mice, the mouse cannot regulate the eating.
So it's a genetic mutation, right? The mice had a genetic mutation; they cannot regulate how much food they were taking.
But after drinking hydrogen water for a long time, the mice become slim.
Okay. So,
and also we measure the energy metabolism, and that is a phenomenon. It's not mechanism. So I continue to find the mechanism.
Okay, so in that publication you found this is the phenomena that you're seeing increases in FGF21. You see increase in energy expenditure. That same article they showed that drinking hydrogen-rich water had a similar effect to, was it a 15 or 20% caloric restriction?
Yeah,
that's right. In the animals, right?
Yeah.
And since I give a presentation and I showed the animals that are in the two mice that are in the on the slide, and I say, these two mice, they grew up together, they did everything together, but one drank hydrogen water and one did not. And the effects are very clear. It's very surprising. And then later, you did the studies to figure out the mechanism to explain this phenomenon.
So it's important to find the mechanism because nobody believes the effect without mechanisms.
Right. We need that in vitro data. We need to understand, hydrogen as what is the target, where is it working at, and that's critical as well because when we want to look at dosing protocols and different diseases and for who hydrogen will be or perhaps will not be effective, we need to understand those in vitro mechanisms. But these are animal studies that we talked about here. What are some of the human studies that kind of corroborate some of the anti-obesity effects?
So I'm a basic scientist. I cannot do by myself, but I can help the clinicians. And also we applying to hydrogen gas for patients with cerebral infarction. Recently we published a paper on cerebral infarction, and that is a randomized clinical studies. And
that was a recent publication, just a couple months ago.
Yes, 1 month.
Okay, just 1 month ago.
And the subject is 50.
50 subjects, double-blinded, placebo-controlled, randomized study.
Actually, it's not double-blind.
It's not, so it's open-label, but 50 people.
I mean that is a randomized, but it's not blind for doctors.
Oh, sure. And this is there's a good reason for that. Okay, go ahead.
And but it's not so bad because the important is a randomized study. And even if the doctors know and this is a hydrogen gas or this is not, but for the blood examination, that is randomized.
Sure.
And for the effect for rehabilitation effect, that is blind.
So what were some of these?
Some of them is blind. Some of them is not blind.
I see.
I mean the doctor knows which is the placebo and
so single blind on parts of it.
So I would say it's blind but not complete blind.
Right.
Okay. So and it's not placebo but the approved medicine. Okay.
Explain this. So hydrogen. Explain. This is very interesting, groundbreaking. Go ahead.
So and that is experiment that is studied, and for the half of them, that is 25 patients, inhaled hydrogen gas, and doctors applied the approved medical drug for 25 patients. So that is a comparison of the hydrogen gas and approved medical drugs.
Do you get that? So you have an approved medical drug that's being compared head to head with inhalation of hydrogen gas, 2%?
Yes, 3%.
3%. Okay, 3% hydrogen. And remember, hydrogen is not flammable when it's below a 4.6% concentration. Right. So we're not running the risk of blowing up the Japanese hospital or something.
Okay. So, and the result of the hydrogen gas is much better than that one of the approved medical
drug.
And as judged by clinical phenotype, symptom, and the effect for rehabilitation, all of them. So it was surprised.
That's a very surprising effect. And now they're doing a very large clinical trial. The Japanese government recently approved in December, I believe, hydrogen inhalation as an official medical procedure for post-cardiac arrest patients.
That is another story, and they are trying to apply the hydrogen gas for 360 patients with cardiac arrest post-syndrome.
Because normally they do a hypothermia, right? So can you explain why they would do a hypothermia or when the effects of this hydrogen gas, what the idea is?
Yeah, because we performed several animal experiments, and we found the hydrogen gas protect the brain.
Right.
And usually after the cardiac arrest.
So after you have a heart attack.
Yes, yeah. It is difficult to protect the brain.
Right, because when you start the blood to go back to the brain, you cause a lot of damage.
So hydrogen has only one advantage. I mean, the hydrogen is very good for survive the patient, and protect the brain.
To help to make the patient survive longer, as well as to protect the brain. So kind of a two-pronged benefit.
Yeah. That is just on the way, but that is the huge clinical studies. The target of the patient number is 360.
Yeah.
By 20 hospitals.
Yeah, and these are very reputable hospitals, like Keio University.
Keio University is Keio University.
Keio University.
Yeah.
So desu ne.
Yeah. And another story, that is acute disease. Okay. And also we are trying to get a good result for the chronic disease, for the rheumatism and Parkinson disease and dementia.
And already there is the double-blinded, placebo-controlled, randomized study. It was small, maybe 20 patients or something on rheumatoid arthritis.
17 patients.
17. Okay, almost 20. 17.
And now they are trying to clinical study. Target is 186.
186.
Yeah.
That would be great. This study, you can go back and read it. 2012, 2013, 2014, around that time period. There's a couple of publications in the same area with rheumatoid arthritis, but it was very powerful. In fact, some of the subjects who are drinking hydrogen-rich water went under remission of the disease. They really helped decrease the inflammation and the C-reactive protein and another number of other biomarkers of the disease.
Yeah, and the potential of hydrogen water is to improve the teeth gum. How to say gum?
The gum.
Gum.
Yeah, like the gingivitis and okay. Yeah.
So the scientist and the medical doctor performed a lot of study.
Yeah.
So the target of the disease is so much.
So many different diseases.
Yeah.
I've always said that most diseases have two problems. One of them is a redox dysregulation. Redox dysregulation is a term I often use to explain that you can have free radicals. Remember, there's the good and there's bad. You need a balance. And there's antioxidants. You can actually get too many antioxidants, right? So you want to have a good balance between oxidation and reduction. And that oxidation reduction is called redox. And so this is, when you have a redox dysregulation, that sets up for diseases. So there's a redox dysregulation as well as a dysregulation of inflammation. Because we also need basal levels of inflammation. And if we have too much, then we have all these diseases. If we don't have enough, then we're going to get sick easy. We're not going to heal. We actually don't improve better when we exercise. So we need some basal inflammation, but if we have the dysregulation, then we can get all these diseases. So we have two main root causes, a dysregulation in the redox and inflammation. And would you agree, hydrogen...
Yes, I completely agree with you.
Hydrogen appears to help both of these things.
Yeah.
It's kind of this, it's very curious when you look at hydrogen from the billions of years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I see what you think about this idea. I've been thinking for the past few years. I presented at a conference in Beijing about the why of hydrogen have an effect. Because we don't really know the mechanisms. We don't know all the primary targets of hydrogen. So we don't know what exactly is going on. We do see that it's working, but we don't know exactly what. But then I thought to myself, is there a potential explanation of why? Why would hydrogen have a beneficial effect? And it goes back to the mitochondria, which is your expertise, right? So maybe we can talk about this a little bit, the hydrogenases, the hydrogysomes, and maybe some of that relationship way back from the beginning with the eukaryotes and the prokaryotes.
Oh, yeah. That is only still imagination.
Yes, it's still imagination.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
still theory.
Ancestor of mitochondria use hydrogen as an energy source.
As an energy source. So they would actually take hydrogen, extract the electrons, and use that for their food.
Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. Provide hydrogen. Okay.
Okay. So we have two things. We have energy that metabolize hydrogen, and energy that produce hydrogen.
Archaea, such kind of metal bacteria that produce metal for getting energy.
Right.
By using hydrogen and CO2. CO2 can be dissolved in a higher concentration, but it is difficult to catch hydrogen. But one of the small bacteria produce hydrogen, and then archaea catch the bacteria that produce hydrogen, and that the bacteria become mitochondria. That is my maybe
a theory. It's endosymbiotic type theory, right? Where we have hydrogen is being produced, and as the end product gets produced, we start to slow down metabolism, and so we have this other bacteria that comes along, or the archaea, right? Yeah. Gets that hydrogen gas, opens its mouth, and is able to consume the hydrogen gas, and now the metabolism can continue going. So in that case, hydrogen is the final electron receptor. And it's able to continue. So there's that interesting relationship going back to the mitochondria, which we have in our body. That's the energy source.
Yes, that's right.
And it's also interesting because life, we don't know exactly where life started, but a lot of the theory and the evidence suggests that life started deep in the oceans in those deep sea hydrothermal vents. And hydrogen gas was being produced there. And hydrogen gas could have served as the first energy source for life. So we have the first prokaryotes that used hydrogen as an energy source. And so now we have prokaryotes, those like bacteria, and then we have plant animal cells, which are called eukaryotes, right? And it's interesting, there was an article published in 1999 in the Journal of Science that talked about how hydrogen was the key to forge eukaryotes out of prokaryotes.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Right?
That is exactly the same.
Okay.
So,
It's very fascinating. The hydrogen that has been involved, even before that, right? When the Big Bang started, hydrogen is considered the father of the elements.
Yeah.
It started everything. Yeah. And then life comes. Yeah. Hydrogen was the genesis of life, right? And then it's involved in the evolution of life from the emergence of the eukaryotes from the prokaryotes, and it's always been there. And then what about our intestinal bacteria?
Intestinal bacteria?
Intestinal bacteria with hydrogen.
Yes. And mammalian cells cannot produce hydrogen. Cannot use hydrogen as an energy source. But intestinal bacteria produce hydrogen. And maybe the hydrogen from the intestinal bacteria is effective, but not so strong.
Yeah.
And someone compared the effect between the drinking hydrogen gas and the hydrogen produced by a bacteria. And the effect of drinking hydrogen water is much more than hydrogen from bacteria.
Yeah, this is that was Dr. Ono, and with the Parkinson's disease model. He's also one of our MHF advisors. But this is very curious. If we just go back quickly to the fact that we've always been exposed to hydrogen from the very beginning, and then like you said, our cells, we cannot produce hydrogen gas, and our cells don't actually use hydrogen gas as an energy source, but we've always been exposed to it from the very beginning. Then we've developed this symbiotic relationship with our intestinal flora, and that bacteria has continued to produce hydrogen gas, so it's always been present. There's basal levels in our blood and our breath, and so it is therapeutic. There was a research article from the Forsyth Institute in Boston, Massachusetts, and the University of Florida where they did a gene knockout study and they showed that hydrogen gas
Yeah.
produced from the bacteria, from the E. coli, was therapeutic from a hepatotoxin or liver toxin. But then we just talked about here that maybe hydrogen gas from drinking hydrogen-rich water is more effective.
That's right.
Then now this is curious though, because when you look at how much hydrogen gas is produced from bacteria, I mean, we're talking liters of hydrogen gas. Versus
the amount of hydrogen gas that the bacteria produces about 100 times or so.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, the important thing is the change of the concentration of hydrogen. And from the hydrogen from bacteria, the concentration near the constant. So that is why drinking hydrogen water is
still shows an effect. This is critical, and this is common in a lot of signal modulating or cell signal modulators. Is the fact that if there's a continuous base of levels, then we have habituation or attenuation of that signal. So there's always this hydrogen gas in the body at constant exposure all the time. The level is pretty much all the same. So our body kind of gets used to that, our cells do. And then when we drink hydrogen-rich water or inhale hydrogen gas a whole bunch really quickly, then we get this tangent, right? And there's this pulse type effect is what causes the cells, the cell modulation to occur. And that's one of the ways that we can explain the reason that drinking hydrogen-rich water is more effective than just getting it from the bacteria.
Yes. And so I told you in the initial stage, and hydrogen water is much more effective than inhalation of hydrogen gas. And for the chronic studies, I use a box for inhalation of hydrogen gas. And mice live in a box with hydrogen gas.
Okay, so you have the box connected to hydrogen gas, and about 2 to 4%?
2% of hydrogen gas.
Okay.
So the mice continuously inhaled hydrogen gas at the same concentration of hydrogen gas.
24/7?
All
the time?
All the time. For example, 1 month or...
Right. But every day, it was just always there, constantly exposed.
Yeah. In that time, the effect disappeared.
It disappeared?
Yeah. So I changed experiment to drinking hydrogen water. So we can compare the effect of hydrogen water and hydrogen gas at the same time, at the initial stage.
Right.
So I think that we must change the thinking.
Our paradigm. Now, is this the study actually that you also published in, I think, 2008 with the apolipoprotein E knockout mice?
Yeah.
And so it had this gene mutation that developed atherosclerosis very quickly. And when the mice drank hydrogen-rich water, it prevented the development of atherosclerosis. Is this right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So but when you found with the inhalation, the constant continuous exposure, you saw some marginal effect at the beginning, in the initial stage, and then it kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
But by the drinking hydrogen-rich water,
Yeah.
You saw throughout the study.
Which
would make sense, I guess, because when you drink hydrogen water, even though it's every day, right? Constantly drinking every day, but it's still intermittent exposure because you drink it, once or a few times a day. Let's talk about the pharmacokinetics of hydrogen then. When we drink hydrogen-rich water, about 500 milliliters, how long until it actually gets into our blood and things?
And it takes a very short time, and without the 10 to 20 minutes, we consume the hydrogen after drinking.
Okay, so after about 10 or 20 minutes or so, we drink the hydrogen, and we start to see, we already see levels, the peak level in the blood, as well as in the breath.
And for at 20 or 30 minutes or so. Yeah.
And then how long does the hydrogen stay in the body before it's pretty much you expel it out?
About 1 hour.
About 1 hour. So you can see the line, it peaks around it depends on how much the dose you ingest, but it can peak anywhere between 5 to 20 minutes or so. It'll have the peak, and then it's going to go back to baseline in about an hour.
Yeah.
And this would also help support the idea that it has more to do with modulating signal transduction than it does as an scavenging free radical or something, right? But this is interesting because hydrogen gas modulating signal transduction. Hydrogen is a gas, though. I mean, it's not a transcription factor. It's not a drug that does these things. If we compare this to other gases, such as the nitric oxide, right? This would be a fun little thing, because nitric oxide is also a gas. When it was first thought that this I think it was called endothelial releasing factor or relaxing factor, and it was suggested it was a gas that was doing this, and the people were laughed at, right?
Yeah.
They thought, no, gases can't do this.
Yeah.
And then later they found it was nitric oxide. It is a gas, and it is having this effect. What are some of your thoughts on hydrogen being a signal modulator as a gas compared to other signal modulators?
Oh yeah, so and other gas is rather active, not so stable.
Like nitric oxide is a free radical, right? Very short half-life.
Yeah. So and hydrogen is essentially inert.
Essentially.
So it's not easily react with other components.
Right.
Yeah. So I think the hydrogen can disturb the free radical chain reaction.
Yeah.
That is my idea. And also the modulation of free radical chain reaction produce lipid mediators.
Yeah, the lipid mediators, which alter calcium signaling.
Yes, that's right. One of them.
Right. And it's interesting, as you said, because hydrogen, because it's just neutral, it's non-polar like this, versus nitric oxide, it is polar, it's a free radical, very short half-life. And other gases like hydrogen sulfide are very non-polar, and it as a signal modulator. And then there's carbon monoxide, also a signal modulator, very, very polar as well. But hydrogen gas is neutral and non-polar, so it is very strange. So I guess technically speaking, according to the definitions of gaseous signal modulators, hydrogen cannot be considered a signal modulator. Technically, because I think some of the criteria, for example, it needs to be produced by the actual mammalian cells, right? And hydrogen gas is not, but yet it still has this this effect on signal
so
transduction.
it's difficult to explain the effect.
Yeah. So going back to energy metabolism, increasing PGC1 alpha, mitochondrial biogenesis. And the fact that I'm going to tie this into exercise and performance and things is what I want to do, but to kind of set the stage a little bit, when we look at exercise, we produce more free radicals. We're breathing more, so by default we produce more free radicals. And these free radicals, reactive oxygen species, have been shown to actually mediate some of the benefits of exercise. They actually activate transcription factors and cause these benefits. And some of the human studies have shown that by taking high doses of antioxidants chronically during training can actually negate or abolish the benefits of exercise training, perhaps because it's neutralizing those beneficial free radicals. So when we talk about hydrogen is a selective antioxidant. It'll only neutralize the bad ones, and it'll keep the good ones. And it also has that enhancing effect at enhancing things like PGC1 alpha. So it makes a lot of sense that hydrogen could be great for athletes, for sports.
But I think so.
Okay, I just recently did a study, a double-blind placebo-controlled trial on hydrogen and athletes, and I know you're doing this as well, but what are some of the findings that you've seen and that are already published, like the one on elite soccer players, for example? Well, what are your thoughts on hydrogen?
Okay. And we made the maximum oxygen consumption.
VO2 max.
By bicycle, and we compared the before and after drinking hydrogen water. Okay. At first, we asked the volunteer to perform the biking.
The bicycle, to get a baseline.
And we take a baseline. And after drinking and after 1 week, we performed the same experiment, and we compare the difference. And also we use placebo water, and the placebo water did not change at all.
Did not change the baseline.
Yeah. But after the drink hydrogen water, the maximum oxygen consumption increased.
That to me, that's very surprising because VO2 max is difficult to improve. In fact, if you look at the elite athletes, for example, they'll train for years and their performance will continue to get better and better, but their VO2 max will stay the same. And that's because they improve running economy, for example, or different things. You don't really improve VO2 max. So to suggest that we're actually improving VO2 max in this population, because it may not work so well for healthy populations that don't have issues, which we discussed earlier. But the fact that we can change that to increase that is very, very powerful.
Yeah.
A lot of people are talk about the lactate, or people call incorrectly lactic acid.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Another group examined the blood lactate after the exercise.
Yeah, this is elite soccer players.
Yeah. And also hydrogen suppress the increase of lactate in blood. Yeah.
So people sometimes don't understand the significance of this. They think, oh yeah, because now we don't have the lactate and that causes fatigue. But we know that's not true. Lactate actually prevents fatigue. It actually prevents acidosis. And what really happens is it's a correlation. When you start to get fatigued or tired, then you start to rely on glycolysis, and that's when you start producing the lactate. And what happens is the hydrogen somehow maybe it's able to help mitochondrial function.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, because
then prevents the lactate production.
Is the result of glycolysis. So after the drink of hydrogen water, the metabolism change from the glycolysis to lipid fatty acid metabolism.
Right, which kind of corroborates with your earlier study, which is increasing energy expenditure and things.
Yeah.
So it all starts coming together, and that's the other thing I mentioned earlier, that it seems that hydrogen mimics the benefits of fasting, of caloric restriction, but it also seems that hydrogen mimics the benefits of exercise.
Yes, that's right. So it is also curious story. So.
Yes, and it's very strange because some of the studies we actually see that hydrogen can transiently increase free radical production, like superoxide in the mitochondrial, right? And then we have the enhanced effect of the NRF2 factor. Could you explain a little bit about the NRF2, hydrogen's effect on NRF2 and the increased glutathione?
Yes, yeah. Usually oxidative stress increase NRF2, which is one of the transcription factor and transcribes antioxidant enzymes.
Right.
So if the NRF2 is increased or activate, and that function antioxidation. But hydrogen decrease oxidative stress, but increase activity of NRF2. So that is opposite.
It's almost a paradox, right?
Yeah, probably.
Where hydrogen is a reducing agent, it's going to reduce oxidative stress, but at the same time it can activate this NRF2 pathway, and maybe it's via this transient increase in superoxide production. We're not sure all the mechanisms, but they're being investigated.
Yeah.
But that's huge because from perhaps aging or different diseases, our levels of, say, glutathione or superoxide dismutase, glutathione peroxidase, right? These start to decrease, and administration of hydrogen can get those levels back up.
Yeah. Yes.
But this is something else to consider, Dr. Ohta, is we need to have a certain level of glutathione. If it goes low, that's bad. But if we get too high, the glutathione levels go too high, that could be a reductive stress. So I think you've also seen that hydrogen, if you administer hydrogen to a healthy person or a healthy animal or healthy cell, that the glutathione levels are already normal, you don't see the increase in glutathione.
In my opinion, okay, hydrogen lead to normal stage, but not increase. If we drink hydrogen water, when the stress decreases the ability of memory, hydrogen recovers the memory ability, but maybe will not increase the memory ability.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's so so I've reviewed pretty much, there's nearly 1,000 publications
Yeah.
now on hydrogen, and I've reviewed all of these, and I'm seeing the same thing, that hydrogen really helps to bring things back to homeostasis.
Yeah.
It doesn't increase things too much or decrease things. It's not really powerful, but has multiple functions.
Yeah, okay.
Bring back
Yeah, okay.
homeostasis.
And also, we apply the hydrogen water to DB mouse, and the DB mouse PGC1 alpha increase, but for the normal mice, PGC1 alpha did not decrease.
So no
decrease and not increase.
So there's no change. So normal.
For the normal one, is no effect by
It's-
hydrogen water.
And this probably helps to explain why, like myself, I exercise every day. I lift weights. I train. I run marathons. I do these different things, and when I take hydrogen, I don't notice anything.
Oh yeah, you are healthy.
and I think a lot of people give this
Yeah.
feedback, but this is kind of anecdotal. But I do hear so many people that who are maybe in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and they take hydrogen and they report these dramatic effects, and I just think, oh wow, that's a strong placebo effect.
Oh, yeah.
But maybe it's because they're so far out of homeostasis
Yeah.
that hydrogen has a greater effect when you're further from homeostasis. But if you're healthy, you may not notice as much.
But for the chronic disease, it takes a long time. For example, for dementia, it takes 40 years to onset dementia, and and also the dementia depend on the genetic type.
Yeah.
So that in a specific genetic type, it is healthy, but has a cause in a body. So for the dementia or the cancer or the atherosclerosis, it takes a long time to
develop.
So that is important for the prevention.
Okay, so that's my next question. So let's say that you have people who are healthy.
Yeah.
They don't have these diseases.
Yeah.
Would it be advisable for them to perhaps try the hydrogen and use it to perhaps prolong or prevent this disease that they may be genetically inclined to have?
Okay, at least in animal experiment, hydrogen has a much more role in prevention.
So it's a better preventive than a cure.
Because pre-treatment of hydrogen water is much more effective
Than post-treatment.
post-treatment.
Yeah.
That suggests hydrogen shows a good role in prevention.
Right. So people who are health conscious, maybe it's a great idea to try the hydrogen, so they can maybe have some prevention.
Yeah.
But really, though, we need more clinical data. Hydrogen is still in its infancy. We can't make claims saying, oh, hydrogen is going to do this and this and this. We have promising preliminary data and some pretty neat human studies, but we need more data. So the real question is this: in my opinion, we have enough data to suggest it has the therapeutic potential. So it is advisable to try. But remember, the most important is do no harm, right? So the safety of hydrogen. We've already talked about hydrogen is very natural to our bodies. It's the most natural thing. I mean, we produce it by intestinal bacteria. But what do you think of the safety of hydrogen? Even though, my question is, even though there's maybe not hundreds and hundreds of clinical trials the last 10 years and everything to really show how hydrogen's effect, we have enough data showing it does have beneficial effect. But do we have enough data also showing that it is safe, that we can go ahead and start taking the hydrogen now?
Yeah, at least we couldn't find any adverse effect after drinking hydrogen water. But still we are afraid of the side effect of hydrogen water. So we must be sensitive to the adverse effect
I think that's a good way to put it, right? We haven't found. We're not saying there are no side effects.
Yeah.
We're saying we have not found any side effects, and we've done a lot of studies. There really is a lot of animal studies, cell studies, quite a number of human studies with no reports of adverse effects, and so it does seem to be very, very safe. And we also know it's natural from our intestinal bacteria, right? We're exposed to it all the time. Every time we eat our diet of fiber, for example, we get more of the hydrogen gas. And actually the deep sea diving, right? The deep sea divers.
Yes, yeah.
Since the 1940s, they've been using hydrogen at literally millions of times higher concentrations than what we use for medical use, with again no chronic or toxic effects.
Yeah, that's right.